Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it? I want you to picture something for me.
Okay, lay it on us.
So, you are standing on a quiet waterfront right as the sun begins to rise. The air is thick and it carries that distinct tropical mix of sea salt and diesel exhaust from a nearby ferry port.
Oh, yeah, that classic island arrival smell.
Exactly. But beneath that, there's something else. There's a fine, almost imperceptible dust in the air. And you look down and you realize that the cobblestones beneath your feet, the plinths holding up the local street signs, even the steps leading up to an old Spanish fort in the distance.
They are made of concrete.
Right. They are carved entirely out of solid museum-grade marble. You've basically stumbled onto an island sitting on millions of dollars of raw, unextracted resources, an island that the global mass-market tourism machine has somehow completely forgotten to pave over.
It really is a glitch in the matrix.
It is. So today's deep dive is an unfiltered look into Romblon, the Philippines' structurally ignored marble capital, and we're unpacking an incredibly specific window in time for you today.
A very narrow window, yeah.
We're talking about $15 to $30 per night accommodations, Bonbon Beach's sudden and explosive appearance as 38th on the world's 50 best beaches ranking, the genuinely brutal overnight ferry logistics you have to navigate just to step foot on the sand, and the ticking clock.
The ticking clock is the key here.
Specifically, whether the February 2026 Tourism Promotions Board moment signals the absolute end of this island's undiscovered era.
And, that ticking clock is not just a metaphor. I mean, it is an absolute economic reality. To understand exactly what is happening in Romblon right now, we have to look at the architectural blueprint of a destination that is teetering on the absolute brink of mass discovery.
Which is why we map this out so rigorously.
Right. We have exactly 11 highly specific data segments to cover today in exact order. Yeah. Because if we skip the underlying macroeconomics or if we ignore the geographical isolation of the province, the actual value of those $15 rooms won't make any sense to you.
The context is everything.
Exactly. Or the harsh reality of that overnight ferry, We are examining a destination in the final moments before the concrete trucks arrive.
I am so glad you framed it that way because I've been wrestling with how to explain the vibe of Romblon in 2026. Travel media always uses these tired cliches, right? Like, oh, it's a pristine Tuscan village frozen in time.
Yeah, which is completely inaccurate.
It completely misses the mark. Romblon isn't some quaint little village that preserved its heritage just for tourists. It's an island where people are literally standing on top of millions of dollars of raw global commodities that the market simply hasn't figured out how to extract efficiently yet.
Right. It exists entirely for itself.
Exactly.
That is a much more accurate assessment, particularly when we zoom out and look at the geographic reality. So Romblon is a province in the Philippines, but it's part of a very specific regional classification called Mimaropa.
Right, the acronym.
Yeah, it stands for Mindoro, Marinduque, Romblon, and Palawan.
Which, if you know anything about Southeast Asian travel, is a wild grouping. I mean, Palawan is a global titan. It's literally synonymous with bucket list travel.
Oh, for sure. Palawan is an absolute tourism powerhouse. But Romblon, despite sharing that exact same regional DNA, the same general climate, the same geographic proximity to major maritime routes, it receives virtually none of the fame.
None of it.
We are talking about a 20-island archipelago anchored by 3 main islands, Romblon Island itself, Tablas, and Sibuyan. And just to give you a sense of the scale, the population on Romblon Island proper is under 40,000 people.
It's tiny.
It is. This is a place that has been structurally ignored by the mass market. Hasn't been quietly building mega resorts in the background while nobody was looking. It has simply been operating a localized civilian economy.
But that isolation is fracturing, literally as we speak. We have these massive institutional hooks converging in 2026. First, there's the aesthetic validation, right?
The beach ranking.
Yeah, Bonbon Beach, which is located on Tablas Island, suddenly ranked 38th globally on the world's 50 best beaches list. And this isn't some obscure travel blog. This is a highly publicized, globally syndicated list read by millions of prospective travelers.
It puts a massive target on the map.
It does. Second, you have the industrial validation. The DOU AST, which is the Department of Science and Technology, handed over a massive 10-year marble industry roadmap to the provincial government in August 2025.
Which fundamentally changes how they handle their primary export.
Exactly. And finally, the commercial validation, a 15-member Tourism Promotions Board familiarization visit that touched down in February 2026.
And what you're describing there is what economists and tourism developers refer to as the triple threat of institutional attention.
The triple threat. I like that.
Yeah, you have media ranking validating the physical beauty. You have a government science and industry roadmap validating the core physical export, which is the marble. And you have the tourism board validating the commercial viability for mass transit.
Because a familiarization visit isn't just a vacation.
Oh, absolutely not. It's not just 15 bureaucrats drinking coconuts. They're taking meticulous notes on infrastructure, measuring road widths for tour buses, checking grid capacities. Historically, in developing tourist economies, this specific convergence of institutional spotlights is the direct precursor to a massive pricing surge.
It's the starting gun.
Exactly. It is the starting gun for external capital investment.
Okay, so let's play this timeline out for a second. If the science and technology roadmap was handed over in August 2025, laying out how to modernize the marble export, and the National Tourism Board arrived in February 2026 to figure out how to market the place.
Right.
Are we literally sitting in the 12 to 18-month sweet spot before the developers swoop in, buy up all the beachfront property, and triple the prices?
The data strongly suggests we are in exactly that transitional window. I mean, let's look at the baseline economy as it stands today. The daily budgets for travelers right now are running between 25 and 55 US dollars.
Which is insane.
It is remarkably low for a destination with global rankings. And the reason the local economy hasn't inflated yet is because it is deeply anchored by their primary industry, the marble. Romblon's marble rivals Italian Carrara in its structural quality.
I've heard they have dozens of colors.
Over 90 distinct documented colors and patterns, yeah. They routinely process export consignments ranging from 1,200 to 1,500 US dollars.
And here is where my mind just short circuits. Because it's a primary export, the raw material is so ubiquitous locally that they literally carve the municipal street lamp posts out of it.
Lampposts.
Let me explain why this is so bizarre to you guys listening. They carve street lamps from museum-grade marble because, locally, the stone is cheaper than importing bags of concrete mix from the mainland.
It's all about logistics.
Right. You're walking down a rural street, and the heavy utilitarian pillar holding up a basic electrical wire is made of a material that, like, a hotel in Dubai would pay tens of thousands of dollars to put in their lobby.
It perfectly illustrates the profound disconnect between global market value and local utilitarian function. I mean, the locals view the marble as functional architecture, but the outside world views it as a luxury commodity.
Right.
And understanding that disconnect is crucial when you try to grasp what Romblon feels like on the ground today. From that macro view of what the province is, we have to pivot to what it's actually like to stand there right now.
Let's talk about that feeling on the ground. Aesthetically, it is shockingly simple. Like, if you go there expecting Bali or even Boracay, you are going to be deeply confused.
Deeply disappointed, probably.
Yeah. There are no commercial resort strips. You will not find a heavily paved beach road lined with Western-facing restaurants selling $12 avocado toast. You won't find loud clubs thumping bass into the ocean. The main town of Romblon essentially consists of an old Spanish fort, a cathedral, the active, dusty marble workshops, and a very quiet, slow-moving waterfront.
And nature heavily dictates your access to that quiet waterfront. The climate mechanics here are non-negotiable. The dry season runs from November through May.
So that's the window you want.
Exactly. If you want the premium experience, meaning the absolute best underwater visibility for diving, and, crucially, the calmest maritime conditions for the ferry crossings, you need to target March and April.
Because what happens after May?
Well, from June through October, the Philippines enters its rainy and typhoon season. And we must be crystal clear about what that means in an archipelago. Ferry cancellations during typhoon season will genuinely strand you.
Yeah, that's a hard stop.
This isn't a minor delay where you sit in an airport lounge for 3 hours and watch Netflix. The Coast Guard will halt all sea travel, and you will be stuck on the island for days. It is a hard operational barrier.
You are at the total mercy of the weather. But when you do time it right, say in late March, the crowd comparison is just staggering. You are looking at a tiny fraction of the visitor volume you would encounter in Palawan.
Barely a blip.
There are no visitor caps required here, no municipal boat quotas like they had to implement in El Nido. The beaches are just, empty. But, and we really need to emphasize this, you are actively trading those crowds for severely underdeveloped infrastructure.
Yes, the trade-off.
The Wi-Fi is highly inconsistent. The municipal power grid can and will go down without warning.
This is a vital study in contrast for anyone analyzing modern travel.
Right.
Palawan is currently buckling under what we call over-tourism pressure.
Right.
The infrastructure there exists, but it is strained to the breaking point by sheer human volume. Romblon, on the other hand, operates under an infrastructure constraint. It is a direct, zero-sum trade-off.
You get one or the other.
Precisely. You are granted access to unhurried locals, pristine, untouched environments, and zero queuing for boats or restaurants. But the cost of that access is forfeiting guaranteed, uninterrupted electricity and high-speed global connectivity.
Okay, I have to bring up the classic backpacker paradox here.
Yeah.
Because isn't this constraint exactly what every adventurous, self-proclaimed, off-the-beaten-path traveler claims they want?
Oh,
I
absolutely.
hear it all the time. Oh, I want to go off the grid. I want to escape the tourist tracks. Give me the raw, authentic, unfiltered experience. Right up until the exact second their smartphone battery dies and they can't upload a video to social media.
Or the fan stops spinning.
Yes, the fan stops spinning in their room at midnight because the grid failed, and suddenly it's a massive crisis.
It is a profound psychological contradiction. People romanticize the concept of a lack of infrastructure until they actually have to live with the physical discomfort of it. The reality of authentic travel is often sweaty, disconnected, and highly inconvenient.
Which leads us directly to the gauntlet you have to run just to get there. Knowing the weather and the vibe, what happens the moment you actually arrive? Let's walk through this because it is punishing.
It is a test of endurance.
You are most likely taking the overnight ferry from Batangas port down to Romblon. This vessel typically departs around 4 in the afternoon, and depending on the currents and the freight loading, docks at roughly 2 in the morning.
2 a.m. is tough.
Let's be honest, arriving anywhere on Earth at 2 a.m. is rough. But arriving at a rural Philippine port in the pitch black is deeply disorienting. The air smells incredibly heavy. It's this thick mixture of marine diesel fuel, sea salt, and like the boiling water from the instant noodles they sell on the passenger decks.
Yeah, not quite the red carpet welcome.
It is the furthest thing from a glamorous welcome.
But the psychology of that 2 a.m. arrival is actually fascinating from a tourism management perspective. That harsh, unromantic, physically grueling logistical hurdle acts as a highly effective filter.
A filter.
Yes, it systematically filters out the casual, convenience-oriented tourist who demands that everything be frictionless and prepackaged. It actively preserves the island for those who possess the patience and the physical tolerance to endure friction.
Okay, I have to push back on that a little bit. We call it a filter because it sounds romantic to us as travelers, like we are proving our worth, earning the right to see the destination. But isn't that just romanticizing a genuinely terrible maritime infrastructure?
Well, I mean,
Like, let's be real. A 2 a.m. arrival actively harms the local economy's ability to grow. The locals don't want their primary supply line docking in the middle of the night. They're just stuck with a compromised, aging transit schedule. It's like paving your driveway with gold because asphalt is too expensive. We marvel at it, but they're just dealing with a lack of resources.
that is an excellent point and a very fair critique. We, as outsiders, do have a tendency to view operational failures in developing nations as quaint authenticity checks.
Exactly.
You are absolutely right. The municipal government would desperately prefer a modern, high-speed daylight ferry system. But the unintended consequence of that current operational failure is the preservation of the island's carrying capacity. It naturally limits volume.
And for the few who do endure that nighttime gauntlet, the reward hits them about 30 minutes after dawn. Because when the sun finally comes up, that marble integration we talked about earlier just punches you right in the face.
It's everywhere.
You're walking around sleep-deprived, and suddenly you notice that Fort San Andres, which is this gorgeous Spanish colonial structure that gives you the best elevated free view of the town, has steps made of marble.
The 17th century St. Joseph Cathedral, too.
Right, marble accents everywhere. And the most surreal part is watching the locals. They are completely indifferent. They are just buying their morning coffee, leaning against a slab of stone that belongs in the Louvre. Meanwhile, the tourists are standing there with their jaws on the floor.
And to explore all that, it is a highly walkable, compact town center, which is a significant asset. You can navigate the architectural highlights on foot, and when you do need to traverse longer distances, the local transport mechanics are incredibly favorable.
The tricycles.
Yes, the primary mode of transit is the tricycle, which is essentially a motorcycle with a covered sidecar. The standard fare is just 15 Philippine pesos. To put that in perspective, that is roughly 27 US cents per person.
27 cents. It's practically a rounding error in any standard travel budget. So You've wandered the marble streets at dawn, you've paid your 27 cents to get across town, you are exhausted from the overnight ferry, and you desperately need a place to sleep.
Time for the accommodation tiers.
Yes. Let's break down the 4 exact tiers of accommodation because honestly, the pricing here completely defies modern tourism logic.
It really does. The accommodation market here is highly stratified, yet incredibly compressed. At the foundation, we have Tier 1, the budget or transient tier. These are properties like the Romblon Transient House or the DRA Guest House.
And how much are we talking?
The price point here is anchored between $15 and $22 per night.
Wow.
At this price, you are securing a fan room. They are basic, they are clean, and they are safe. What you are explicitly sacrificing at this tier is environmental control, meaning no AC, and you are unlikely to have a scenic view.
Right. You are paying for a mattress and a spinning fan. But if you step up slightly, you hit Tier 2, the mid-range. This is where you find places like Palawan Bed and Breakfast or Capiclan private rooms, which run $25 to $35 a night.
That $10 jump is crucial.
It is, because it buys you air conditioning, which in the Philippine humidity can completely alter your sleep quality, plus significantly upgraded bathroom facilities. And sitting right at the absolute top of this mid-range bracket is the Horizon Hotel Romblon.
A fantastic property.
It's fascinating because it actually pulls a 4.9 rating on TripAdvisor, yet it still sits in this incredibly accessible price bracket of under $35.
Stepping up again, we enter Tier 3, the beach resort category, which ranges from $30 to $55 a night. Notable properties here include the Romblon Beach and Dive Resort, which is actually situated on the adjacent Lugbon Island.
Okay, an island off the island.
Right. That property hovers around $33 to $34, or roughly 1,900 Philippine pesos. You also have the Sanctuary Garden Resort in this bracket. The differentiator here is atmosphere. These properties are clean, highly atmospheric, and crucially, water adjacent.
And finally, we reach the ceiling. Tier 4, the private garden and boutique tier. You have properties like the Lona Circle Private Garden, El Krimphof Resort, and the 3P Beach Resort, which lists starting prices around 50 to 72 Canadian dollars.
So in US dollars, what's the cap?
This absolute top tier maxes out between $45 and $70 a night. I really want that to sink in for you. The most expensive, premium, private boutique experience you can buy on this island hits a hard ceiling at $70. It's cheaper than a budget room in El Nido.
What is structurally fascinating here is the sheer compression of this pricing scale. The financial delta, meaning the gap between sleeping in a basic utilitarian fan room and securing the absolute top-tier boutique property on the island, is barely $50.
It's nothing.
If you analyze most global destinations, that gap is hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars a night. This compressed scale completely restructures the traveler's budgetary approach.
It's wild. You think about what $70 gets you in a major Western city. The luxury option in Romblon costs the exact same as a standard, noisy, shared hostel dorm bed in a city like London or New York. It forces you to completely rethink your accommodation standard.
It really does.
Okay, so once your bags are down, you have to eat. Let's dive into the food, the groceries, and the local etiquette. Because honestly, trying to overspend on food here requires active effort.
The local dining economy is remarkably insulated from tourist inflation. The backbone of this economy is the carinderia. If you eat at a local carinderia, you are paying between 50 and 80 Philippine pesos. That translates to roughly 88 cents to $1.41 in U.S. currency.
And you get a lot of food for that.
For that price, you receive a large portion of rice and 2 viands.
For listeners who might not be familiar with Philippine food culture, let's explain what a viand is. A carinderia is essentially a local neighborhood eatery. When you walk up, you'll see a glass display or a row of large metal pots. A viand is simply the meat, seafood, or vegetable dish that accompanies your mountain of rice.
Right, the main dish.
Yeah. So you point at a rich, savory pork adobo or maybe a ginatang langka, which is young jackfruit cooked down in creamy coconut milk and chilies, and that is your viand. It is deeply flavorful, slow-cooked, local food. And even if you upgrade to a full sit-down restaurant with table service, your meal will only run you between $3 and $6.
And if you choose to participate in the local market economy, the raw ingredient costs are equally striking. Fresh bangus, which is milkfish, the national fish of the Philippines, retails in the wet market for 80 to 120 pesos.
So like $1.40 to $2.
Exactly. $1.40 to $2.12 for fresh, highly versatile local protein.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the grocery landscape is entirely localized. You will not find massive multi-level SM or Robinson's supermarket chains here.
Just the local shops?
Right. You are purchasing your daily goods from Sari stores, which are small, family-owned convenience kiosks. A kilo of rice is less than 50 US cents. Canned goods range from 60 cents to $1.20. A traveler could effortlessly keep their daily grocery expenditure well under 10 US dollars.
This brings up a concept I find completely fascinating.
Yeah.
The zero tourist markup phenomenon. Like in a place like Bali or Phuket, there are essentially two economies running in parallel.
The local and the tourist.
Yeah. There is the local economy, and then there is the heavily inflated tourist economy designed specifically to extract maximum wealth from foreigners. But in Romblon, because the sheer volume of tourists hasn't hit that critical mass yet, that secondary economy doesn't exist. You are participating directly in the primary civilian economy. You pay the exact same price for the milkfish as the grandmother standing next to you.
Precisely. The economic mechanics have not bifurcated yet. And this reality ties directly into behavioral etiquette, particularly regarding commerce.
Oh, this is important.
The fundamental rules of respect apply everywhere, obviously, removing your shoes before entering certain homes, accepting offered food with graciousness. But there is a crucial economic etiquette we must emphasize.
Yeah.
Do not haggle in the marble workshops.
Yes, I want to challenge everyone listening on this exact point. We have been conditioned by aggressive tourist markets around the world to believe that haggling is this, mandatory savvy traveler skill.
Right, like it's a game.
But context is everything. When you walk into a dusky workshop in Romblon and you watch a master artisan hand-carving a piece of world-class stone using tools they've maintained for decades, and they ask you for $10 for a highly intricate piece, haggling over $2 isn't just rude, it's economically absurd. You are standing in front of the source of the supply chain. The prices are already phenomenally fair. Just pay the artist.
I completely agree. Imposing a haggling mindset born from inflated tourist markets onto a primary resource economy is deeply inappropriate. And this baseline of fair, uninflated pricing extends to local activities as well.
Like the island hopping.
Let's look at maritime transit for leisure. Hiring a local boat for a full day of island hopping, navigating the archipelago to access these pristine marine environments, costs between 43 and 53 US dollars in total for the vessel.
Total, for the whole boat.
Yes. If you are traveling in a group of 4 and split that cost, each individual is paying roughly $11 to $13 for a full day on the water.
It's unbelievable. So let's roll all these micro costs up, the 27-cent tricycles, the 88-cent meals, the $13 boat days, and build out the exact daily macro budgets. We need to define exactly what it costs to exist here based on your specific travel style.
Let us begin with a low-budget tier. This profiles the traditional backpacker. The daily spend here is between 25 and 35 US dollars a day.
That is lean.
Very lean. Mechanically, that breaks down to an $18 transient room, 2 Carinderia meals totaling roughly $3, a $1 allocation for tricycle transit, and perhaps $3 for incidentals like bottled water or a local snack. If this traveler shares an island-hopping boat, it adds just $10 to $15 to their daily average. It is an incredibly efficient way to travel.
Then we move to the mid-budget, which is almost always utilized by couples. This bracket runs between 55 and 80 US dollars a day, combined.
Right, combined.
That means $27 to $40 per person. At this tier, a couple is splitting a $30 to $35 mid-range room. They have a collective $15 allowance for sit-down meals, $15 to $20 allocated for a shared activity, and a few dollars for transport.
I want to pause and emphasize the statistical rarity of that mid-budget figure. If you analyze most modern travel indices, budget guidelines almost universally default to quoting per-person costs because the baseline expenses are so high. But in Romblon, 2 human beings can travel together, secure a private room with air conditioning, eat at restaurants, and charter boats, all for under $80 total per day.
It's unheard of.
It is an anomaly in the 2026 global market. Moving upward, we have the high-budget profile. This requires a spend of $100 to $150 a day. That capital secures a $55 to $70 boutique room, an exclusive $53 private boat charter where you control the entire itinerary, $20 dedicated to premium dining, and $25 to $35 allocated per scuba dive.
And finally, we have to talk about the digital nomad budget. On paper, it looks like a utopia, $900 to $1,400 US dollars for an entire month. You see that number on a blog, you calculate your Western salary, and you immediately start packing your laptop.
It's a huge temptation.
But we have to shatter a massive illusion right now. Romblon is not nomad ready. It is a trap for remote workers. If your livelihood depends on connectivity, the infrastructure constraints we discussed earlier will break you.
Guaranteed.
Imagine you have a crucial high-stakes client Zoom call at 3 p.m. and at 2:55 p.m. the entire island's power grid just shuts down. There's no backup generator at your $70 boutique hotel. There is no 5G cellular tower to tether to. You just drop off the map. Missing that call might cost you a $5,000 contract. Suddenly, your cheap $900 month becomes incredibly expensive in lost revenue.
That is a critical warning. Connectivity is a utility, and here, it is simply not guaranteed.
You must treat this province as a holiday, a true disconnection, not a remote office.
To finalize the budget picture, we must factor in the macro logistics. The flights. To physically reach the province, you have two primary routing options. You either fly domestically from Manila's Ninoy Aquino International Airport and AIA directly to Tablas Airport, or you take the 3-hour overland route from Manila down to the Batangas port to catch the ferry we discussed.
So what are the total costs?
For context, if you are originating internationally, let's say flying in from Sydney, Melbourne, London, or Toronto, your long-haul flights into Manila will range from $450 to $850 US. The subsequent domestic transit, the buses, the ferries, the local fees to get from Manila to Batangas and finally to Romblon adds another $50 to $80.
Okay, not bad.
Therefore, your absolute total door-to-door transit cost from a Western hub is roughly $500 to $930 return.
Which, given the current state of aviation pricing, is a phenomenal value for reaching the other side of the planet. But mentioning Manila's airport and that overland route perfectly cues up the dark side of these logistics. That infrastructure reality brings us neatly to the three very specific, named traps that catch international travelers completely off guard.
Right, let's walk through the traps. Trap number one is what we call the to-go ferry schedule cascade failure. As we established, the primary ferry departs Batangas port at 4 p.m. The trap is the geographical friction between NAIA Airport and Batangas, specifically the legendary paralyzing reality of Manila traffic.
Oh, it's brutal.
Attempting to land on an international flight in Manila at, say, noon and executing a same-day overland connection to catch a 4 p.m. boat is an exercise in extreme, almost reckless optimism. If you get caught in gridlock and miss that boat, you do not just lose a few hours. The schedule dictates that you lose a full 24 hours of your itinerary.
So what's the fix?
The mechanical fix is proactive. You must intentionally break the transit. Book a $30 to $50 transit hotel in Manila for a buffer night upon arrival.
I cannot emphasize this enough. I want you to imagine the sheer emotional collapse of sitting in the back of a Grab taxi, staring out the window at a total standstill on the Manila Skyway. You watch the clock tick past 3:30 p.m., then 3:45 p.m. You are exhausted, jet-lagged, and you know with absolute certainty that your ferry is untying its mooring lines and pulling away without you.
It's agonizing.
It will poison the entire mood of your trip. Paying $40 for a clean transit hotel near the airport isn't just buying a bed. You are literally purchasing an insurance policy for your sanity.
Trap number two involves a linguistic discrepancy. Beach resort, branding misalignment. In the Western lexicon, the word resort evokes very specific architectural imagery. Sprawling properties, massive Bali-style infinity pools, expansive buffets, and golf carts shuttling guests.
Oh yeah, the whole 9 yards.
In rural Philippine provinces like Romblon, the term resort is often applied to a collection of modest nipa huts, traditional bamboo and thatch structures equipped with basic van cooling. The fix here requires diligence. You cannot rely on the name. You must read 3 to 5 recent reviews, specifically scanning for mentions of power consistency and Wi-Fi reliability. Or, to mitigate risk entirely, simply secure a booking at the established upper-tier properties like Horizon or Sanctuary Garden.
And trap number 3. This is my favorite because it is purely a psychological failing. The marble souvenir weight trap. Okay, picture this. You are wandering through one of those dusty, incredibly atmospheric workshops. The light is cutting through the marble dust. You see a stunning, intricately carved marble figurine of a sea turtle, and the artisan only wants $5 to $15 for it. Then you see a set of gorgeously polished marble tiles for $20 to $40.
Good bargain.
Your brain tells you, this is the deal of a lifetime, and you start buying everything in sight. You feel like a Renaissance patron of the arts. But you have completely forgotten the physics of budget aviation. Marble is literally heavy, dense rock. Budget airlines operating in the region, like Cebu Pacific or AirAsia, strictly and aggressively enforce a 7-kilo limit for carry-on baggage. They will weigh your bag at the gate.
It is a fascinating cognitive blind spot. The intoxicating romantic environment of the artisan workshop overrides the traveler's spatial awareness and understanding of aviation physics. They purchase the stone, and upon arriving at the small regional airport, they are confronted with steep, punitive checked baggage fees,
How much do they add?
often adding $10 to $25 per sector. Or they're forced to arrange international shipping, which introduces a complex $25 to $60 upfront cost, fundamentally eroding the perceived bargain of the initial purchase.
You leave the workshop feeling like a brilliant art collector, and you arrive at the check-in counter feeling like a very stressed, very heavily taxed pack mule. So navigating those traps requires mental vigilance, but what about your actual physical safety on the island? Let's talk about the security profile of the province.
From a purely criminological standpoint, the safety profile is exceptional. Romblon is classified as Level 1, which denotes the lowest possible risk category. It features negligible crime rates. This is primarily because it is driven by a civilian, community-focused economy rather than a transient, nightlife-heavy tourist economy.
Which is great for solo travelers.
Yes, for solo travel, the environment is extremely comfortable. There are no sprawling, neon-lit late-night bar strips that typically serve as vectors for opportunistic hazards like pickpocketing, scams, or alcohol-related altercations. In fact, solo foreign travelers are still statistically unusual enough in the outer barangays that they tend to be noticed and actively protected by the local hospitality network. The community assumes a protective posture over guests.
Which is such a comforting, beautiful thing to experience. But, and there is always a but, we have to distinguish between social safety and medical safety. The provincial hospital infrastructure is incredibly basic. It is designed for routine local care.
Right.
If you have a serious trauma event, say you get in a severe scooter accident on a mountain road, or you suffer a major decompression sickness incident while diving, the local facilities cannot handle it. You will require a helicopter medical evacuation to a specialized hospital in Manila. Therefore, carrying comprehensive travel insurance that explicitly includes medical evacuation coverage is absolutely non-negotiable.
It creates a highly specific risk dynamic. As a traveler, you possess high social safety, meaning you are insulated by a tight-knit, morally structured community that genuinely cares about your well-being. But you simultaneously possess low medical safety due to the stark geographic isolation from advanced tertiary medical care.
It really forces you to define what off the beaten path actually means. We love the idea of escaping civilization, but true isolation means you are swapping out institutional infrastructure for community goodwill. You are trusting the people around you rather than a system. It is a profoundly beautiful way to travel, but you have to acknowledge that it makes you vulnerable.
And we should mention cultural comfort, too.
Yes, regarding LGBTQ+ travelers, the Philippines as a nation is broadly known to be highly tolerant. However, rural provinces like Romblon hold on to deeply traditional conservative Catholic roots. While outright hostility is incredibly rare, public displays of affection might draw stares. Discretion is contextually appropriate simply out of an understanding of the local cultural baseline.
Synthesizing all of this operational data, the grueling logistics, the compressed budgets, the specific risk profiles, it brings us to the experiential core. What are the specific moments that will define this trip, and what are the realities that might break it?
Let's start with the absolute highs, the best moments. First, the unscripted freedom. Walking into those marble workshops without a tour guide, without a ticket, just watching the mastery happen in real time. Second, Bonbon Beach. Experiencing a globally ranked, pristine sandbar that shifts with the tides, and having absolutely zero vendors approaching you to buy cheap sunglasses or a massage.
Just you and the ocean.
Exactly. Third, for the action-oriented, there is Mount Guiding, known locally as G2, towering 2,058 meters up on Sibuyan Island. Because of its steep, rugged topography, it has forced extreme evolutionary isolation, meaning it is packed with endemic wildlife found nowhere else on Earth. And finally, just the profound, quiet joy of sitting by the ocean, realizing you've had a spectacular, all-inclusive day of adventure that only cost you $30.
Conversely, the honest disappointments must be rigorously acknowledged. As we debated earlier, the 2 a.m. ferry arrival remains deeply unromantic. The constant infrastructure friction, the sudden unexplained loss of power, the dropping Wi-Fi signals, the complete absence of late-night food options if you arrive hungry. That can be incredibly jarring for those accustomed to on-demand convenience.
It takes a toll.
Furthermore, attempting to see the three main islands, Tablas, Romblon, and Sibuyan, within a standard one-week vacation requires heavy, exhausting boat transit. And, as we detailed, managing the physical weight of marble souvenirs introduces a unique logistical frustration.
But I want to pose a question to you and to the listener. Are those disappointments actually bad, or are they necessary?
I would argue they are structural necessities. Those disappointments are the precise defensive mechanisms that preserve the best moments. If that ferry schedule was optimized to arrive at a convenient noon hour, and if the provincial government installed gigabit fiber optic Wi-Fi across every beach, Bonbon Beach would not remain empty.
Right, it would look like Boracay.
The friction keeps the volume low. If you remove the friction, the sandbar becomes crowded with jet skis, and international chains will bid for the rights to build a coffee shop right on the sand. The discomfort is the price of the preservation.
It's the ultimate trade-off. So I'm going to ask you, the listener, to weigh this out right now in your own mind. Are you willing to eat a styrofoam cup of instant noodles at 2 a.m. in the dark, smelling heavy diesel fuel and sweating because the fan in your room died, if it means you get to have a world-class, globally ranked beach completely to yourself at noon the next day?
If the honest answer to that question is no, if that ratio of friction to reward sounds deeply unappealing to your travel style, then Romblon is not for you. In that case, we need to look at two highly specific alternative islands in the region that solve some of these constraints.
Yes, let's look at the alternatives. Alternative one is Sibuyan. Accommodations there run about $20 to $40 a night, with a daily budget hovering between $35 and $65. Sibuyan is essentially a time machine. It shows you exactly what Romblon will likely look like in about 5 years.
The infrastructure is already caught up.
Yeah, it has significantly better internet, a rapidly growing aesthetic cafe culture tailored to foreigners, and it's easily accessible via a simple 1 to 2 hour fast ferry from the major hub of Cebu. But the trade-off is that it completely lacks the unique industrial marble identity of Romblon. It's beautiful, but it's a bit more standard tropical fare.
Alternative 2 is Camden. This destination runs $25 to $45 a night, requiring a $40 to $70 daily budget. Camden solves the activity infrastructure problem. It features highly developed professional dive shops and a dramatically different aesthetic driven by its volcanic landscape.
But it's harder to get to, right?
Right. The logistical hurdle here is financial rather than maritime. Reaching Camden efficiently usually requires an extra domestic flight into Cagayan de Oro, which adds $60 to $120 to your overall routing costs.
It's essentially a personality test for travelers. Sibuyan is the safe bet. It's for the aesthetic traveler who wants the vibe of an undiscovered island but still harbors a desperate baseline need to check their email and drink a perfectly poured flat white. Camiguin is for the hardcore, action-oriented traveler who prioritizes volcanic drama and structured dive logistics over artisanal local culture. And Romblon. Romblon remains the domain of the cultural pioneer.
Which brings us to the ultimate question we promised to answer. Is it actually worth it? We have built a final matrix based on traveler profiles, and the data dictates very specific verdicts.
Here's the final matrix. If you are a backpacker, the verdict is YES, strongly and unconditionally. Existing on $25 to $35 a day in a location of this caliber is simply unbeatable in the modern market. But listen to me carefully. The 18-month window before the Tourism Promotions Board effects kick in is rapidly closing. You cannot put this on a 5-year bucket list. You need to go now. It is urgent.
If you are a mid-range couple, the verdict is yes, but it requires psychological calibration. You must explicitly accept the infrastructure gap. Understand that this is an environment designed for traveling, for actively engaging with a foreign community and tolerating their local realities, not merely holidaying in insulated, climate-controlled comfort.
If you are traveling as a family, the verdict is conditional. If your kids are under 10 years old, honestly no. The rough midnight ferries and the geographic distance from pediatric emergency medical care make the risk profile too high. But if your kids are 12 and up, yes, it is an incredible formative adventure. A family can easily do 10 days for under $2,500 total flying out of a hub like Australia. But if you are wrangling toddlers, skip the friction and just take them to a resort in Bali.
For the luxury traveler, the verdict is not yet. Maxing out the local economy at $70 a night means there's no infrastructure to support high-end demands, no evening turn-down service, no expansive multi-therapist spas, no fine dining cellars. You need to wait for the 2028 to 2030 capital investment cycle to build those facilities. Finally, for the digital nomad, the verdict is strictly short stay only. Treat it as a recharge destination. You can spend $1,000 for 2 weeks of beautiful offline peace, but it fundamentally cannot serve as a reliable base for serious sustained digital output.
So when we zoom all the way out, what does this actually mean? If we tie it all back to that DOS 10-year marble industry roadmap from August 2025, the countdown has started. The shift is inevitable. If you are a luxury traveler waiting for the five-star resorts to get built, check your calendar in 2036. If you're a backpacker looking for the edge of the map, your clock is ticking right this second.
If we synthesize this entire matrix, Romblon in 2026 acts as a mirror for the traveler. And it does not exist to cater to you. It demands that you adapt to it. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, one that stretches beyond the budgets and the ferry schedules. Consider that 10-year industrial roadmap, and consider that tourism board's familiarization visit. What actually happens to the soul of a tight-knit community when an ancient utilitarian way of life, where people are literally hand-carving world-class marble just to build their own street lamps, suddenly transitions into a globally marketed, mass-consumed tourist commodity? Will that marble, and the distinct local culture that shapes it, hold its intrinsic value when the weight of the entire world finally arrives on its shores?
If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day. That is The Honest Verdict from Phil and H.